This will be my video lecture in CVN, no? Chameleon Values and Norms, both for Block A, Block and Block B. No? But before I start my lecture, of course, I'd like to remind you again that we will have a class this Friday. No? And during our class, I'd like you to bring your grammar books. No? When I say grammar books, it will be the one that is a thicker one, which is I think that is the other one is Let Us Study Sentences, and the other one is the grammar book. No? So I'd like you to bring that so that you could follow through what we are discussing during the meeting. No? So last time we talked about the general characteristics, no, of norms. We are now on the topic of norms. Norms. By way of a review, what are norms again? Well, norms are actually what? They are rules or standards. Rules or standards. But we have to qualify. Is specific. No? Specific rules or standards that are socially acceptable. No? When we say socially acceptable, it has been accepted by and observed by society. No? It has been accepted and observed by society. So it is but proper that for people to belong, no, to a certain society, they have to follow the norms. Usually norms would be associated with normal, something that is normal. Or not only normal, but aside from being normal, NUCA, no, yung NUCA na acronym. It's not only normal, it is also usual, it is also customary, and of course acceptable. No? NUCA. No? So I think I have discussed this last meeting. Now we proceed with the other general characteristics. I have mentioned already the 5 general characteristics of norms, so we proceed. Now norms are, again, number 6 would be, norms are internalized by individuals. No? And how do they internalize? How do we internalize norms? Norms are internalized by individuals. We, no, as members of society. How do we internalize, no, the norms? Well, of course, through social interaction. But social interaction. As we interact with the other members of the community or society, this one, social interaction. As we interact or as we deal with the other members of society, of course, we follow rules. We follow expectations of behavior, no? Expectations of action or behavior, no? In short, we follow what we call norms. So, of course, when we go out and interact with other people, what other people will do as acceptable, we also follow them, because these are norms that have been observed and followed by other members of our society. So remember that norms are internalized by individuals. How? Through social interaction. Now we proceed with the 7th characteristic of a norm. No? I have already discussed the first 5, so I will just be mentioning the last 4 general characteristics, and then we transition to another topic. So number 7, norms are intended to regulate. Norms are intended, this is the objective of norms, are intended to regulate. What will it regulate? Norms are intended to regulate our behavior. No? How? Regulate. How? Well, of course, if you do not follow norms, there are sanctions, no? And the sanctions, of course, may depend on severity. No? Will depend on severity of sanctions that are imposed. What we do is just to follow the norms. No? And of course, when we talk of this regulation of a certain action or behavior, there is a coercive influence. No? Coercive influence of the norm, because we are afraid. Coercive meaning it impels you to do or not to do a certain action. No? Coercive nature of norms meaning it impels you, or it requires you or encourages you to do that action because it is acceptable, or it prohibits you not to do that action. It prohibits you of not doing that action because you might deserve a penalty, which we call sanctions. Of course, the intention of this, it does not only regulate the behavior of individuals, but it also regulate the behavior of all people in a society. Clear so far? Now this term, when we say regulate, of course, the fact that it regulates, or what we call it, it prohibits or it encourages you to do a certain action because that one is accepted by the society where you are living. No? Then we proceed with the 8th general characteristic of a norm. What is that? Of course, everything that I'm discussing is already discussed in your module or in your book. No? Norms are developed as a result of, this is what I have told you already. Norms, how are they developed? Are developed, no? How do they come into being? Are developed as a result of interaction or communication. No? So, as I have mentioned earlier, they are internalized. No? And how are norms internalized? They are internalized, of course, by individuals, by all people in society, because of social interaction or communication. Remember that a person or an individual is a social animal. No? And as a social animal, he belongs to a certain group. Belongs to a certain group. To a group or society. Or society. And if you belong to a certain group or society, of course, what the members of that society or group does or do, you also need to follow so that you belong. No? That is what we call belonging to a certain group. No? So, if you belong, if you follow a certain norm or a certain rule or standard, of course, in the long run, you will internalize that as part already of your personality, no? As part of your character. No? Okay, let us move on to the number 9 characteristic. Anyway, if you cannot follow through my lecture, you can just read your module, no? Because everything that I am discussing are written in your module. Okay, the last one, of course, when we talk of norms as a another characteristic of norms would be norms are culture specific. Or culture specific. No? What do we mean by this? When we talk of culture specific, of course, they vary. Norms vary according to the place or society. No? They vary, meaning they are not the same. Every society have its own set of norms. No? And that is what we are also talking about. Norms are universal in nature because every society will have their own set of norms. It is culture specific because it takes into account what is acceptable in that particular culture or society. Okay, so I have mentioned already the 9 general characteristics of norms. May I proceed now with the next topic, which is what we call the types of norms, no? The types, major types of norms. Actually, there are 4, no? Types of norms. What are norms again? When we talk of norms, we are talking about rules, no? Standards, no? I repeat, this is just a repetition. Norms are rules, standards, or expectations that are acceptable in society. Then of course, when we talk of this, we talk about specific rules, standards, or expectations. Okay, clear? Okay, we proceed with the types of norms. The first one is what we call folkways. No? Folkways. Folkways. So what are folkways? Folkways are actually, in simple terms, we call this customs or conventions. No? Customs or conventions that have been accepted by the lapse of time. They have been followed and observed by people in society, so they become customs or conventions. And folkways define what is, of course, polite versus rude behavior. No? So this one, when we talk of folkways, these are customs. No? When we talk of customs, these are actions or behavior that have been accepted in a particular place or society. They have been accepted because they are being followed or observed by people there. And this folkways define what we call polite versus rude behavior. So example of a folkway. Now the one written in your book, we say that a folkway is one that is customary or customs or conventions. Say for instance, falling in line, no? Falling in line. Of course, when you fall in line to buy your food or in the immigration counter, you have to fall in line. And of course, when you arrive there, there is already a line, no? Here, and this is the counter, for instance. That is the counter. Of course, when you arrive, of course, what is customary or normal is that you fall in line at the last one. So you need not go over that line and go there, because that will be a violation of a norm, no? And that norm is what we call folkway, no? So the tendency for you, because you are ashamed to be doing that is not polite behavior, that is very rude, is of course for you to fall in line at the last part of the line, no? So falling in line is a norm, and this norm is called a folkway. Now, what is the problem about folkways? The problem about folkways is that they do not have any moral significance. No, their importance is not that severe, no, or that what we call, there is nothing that will impel you to do it, because there is what we call no moral significance, no? No moral significance. No moral significance. What does this mean, no? Moral significance, meaning ethical, no? When we talk of ethical, we talk also of moral significance. What does that mean? Well, of course, when you violate, no? Say for instance, you violate a folkway, or anything of this nature, when you violate that, the consequence is not that serious. No serious consequence. No serious consequence. No? So if you violate a folkway, because there is no moral significance or ethical significance, there is no serious consequence, no? Or what we call no serious consequence or sanctions, no? So meaning, if I ask you now, are folkways commonly violated? Well, of course, the answer in a civilized society may be no, but there are societies which commonly violate folkways because of this, no? Because there is no serious consequence or sanctions. Clear? Remember that these are just customs or conventions. Okay? Let us move to the next type of norm. Remember that folkways are norms, no? The second type of norms, these are the general types, no? Is what we call mores, no? This time mores, no? Taken from the word, of course, moral, no? Moral. When we talk of moral principles, no? And this time we talk about something that is moral or ethical, no? Other term for moral would be ethical. This time when we talk of mores, what are they? Are they more strict than folkways? The answer is yes. More strict than folkways. Why is that? Well, because it carries, as I told you, they carry already ethical element, no? And when we talk of ethical or moral element, we talk about what is right or wrong, diba? What is good or evil, what is moral or immoral. So when we talk about this mores, there is already the element of ethics or morals in society. So they are more strict than folkways. Now, let me ask you, are these mores commonly followed? Of course, the answer would be yes, because you are also, if you violate these mores, you may be guilty and sanctions will be imposed against you. No, sanctions or penalties. When we talk of sanctions, we talk about penalties. So in short, this one, mores, exact a greater influence, no? Mores would exact a greater influence to the individual. Exact a greater influence to the individual or person. Why? Why do they exact a greater influence? Because every individual would be afraid of what we call sanctions or penalties. Clear? Sanctions or penalties. Diba? Remember, why do we have to impose sanctions if you violate mores? Well, of course, because as I told you, they carry the element of ethics or morals. No? Okay? Clear so far? We proceed to the next. And of course, this is a more negative type of a severe or a very negative type of norm, which we call taboos. No? Taboos. Not taboo, no? Taboos. So the accent would be on the second syllable, no? We talk about taboos, and this is, as I told you, these are very negative type of norms, no? Type of norms. Now, because these are very negative, of course, they also would have sanctions or penalties. Again, very negative meaning they are abhorred, no? In society. This is not acceptable at all in society because you violate certain rules, no? For instance, no? Instance would be an incestuous marriage, for instance. Incestuous. What do you mean by incestuous? Well, you marry your brother or your sister, or you marry your father. That is incestuous. Incestuous marriages, no? What are incestuous marriages? Well, of course, you marry somebody within your family circle, no? Or another example would be abortion, no? So when you abort your child, of course, that is frowned upon, shunned away from this, because abortion is, of course, extremely objectionable. No? Extremely objectionable in our society. No? But some societies may accept already abortion. That's why I told you norms are culture specific. But in our jurisdiction, in our country, this is extremely objectionable. So, because these taboos are the nature of taboos are very negative norms, no? Very negative norms. They carry very negative norms. Of course, they carry sanctions, no? They carry sanctions or penalties, no? Now, what are the sanctions? Of course, well, you may ask, what are the sanctions that may be imposed in case you violate a certain norm like taboos? Well, it might be, of course, you might be ostracized, or ostracism. Ostracism, you might be expelled or expulsion from the group. Or if a certain norm or a certain action is punishable by law, well, because imposition of a penalty or punishment. No? Punishment. This may be in different forms from country to country or from group to group, society to society. Now, the last type of norms would be what we call laws. Remember that laws are also considered norms, no? Laws, no? Batas, no? And these laws are what? Because they have been codified, no? When we talk of laws, they are codified social norms, no? Codified social norms. When we talk of codified, they are written in an organized way, in an organized manner, no? So here, we already have a document because it's codified, no? And of course, when we talk of laws, this one needs strict observance. No, you have to follow laws, otherwise you will be imposed a certain penalty or punishment, no? And of course, when we talk of laws, the purpose will of course be following. Remember that laws are also norms, no? The objective of following or the objective of enacting certain laws is of course to maintain what we call social order. No, this is the objective of laws. No, why are laws enacted or made? In order for us to maintain what we call social order. Now, what are the different characteristics of laws? Let us take this briefly. No, what are laws? What are the characteristics of laws? No, laws are actually rules of human conduct. No, when we talk of laws, they are actually rules of human conduct. So they are considered as norms. Diba? And of course, laws, why are laws there? They have been created because they are just to enforce, no? Just and obligatory, no? Meaning you cannot escape the effect or validity of a law because all members in that particular society would be obliged to follow and observe the law, no? And of course, laws are also legislated or made by competent authority. Competent authority. Of course, if it is made by competent authority, we are talking about Congress. And then finally, laws are what? Letter D would be laws are observed by all. No? Laws are observed by all. or in short, obligatory. Okay? But remember that laws form, or they are also part of what we call norms. Okay? I think that is all for today. You continue reading chapter 2 or unit 2 of your book. Next time we take up other classifications of norms. I will not be giving you your assignment today because you still have to do your video clip, which the deadline of which you need to submit it before or on or before noon time of Friday. Okay, September 23. Okay, that's all for today. See you this Friday.